So, hello. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Hello. This is my bestie, business strategist, Ronnie Bartles, and I myself am your brand strategist, Ashley Rhoda. And today we are coming to you with a very juicy topic and straight out of our last Sunday conversation, because it was so good, we had to bring it to you. This was the purpose of this Mimosa Hotline talk show. Was we talk in depth, and I think we're like either overly qualified, overeducated girlfriends and people don't talk like this, or more people need to talk like this. Yeah. So I'm super excited. I don't really know how to set the tone for it other than to just kind of dive into it. And to address, let's say, an elephant in the room, or those that are unaware or don't know this, the market fluctuates in times of recession and inflation. And right now we've been living through an inflation. We're about to go into a recession. And I was asking Ronnie some of the details because personally, as an empath, I am not really able to watch the news all the time because it just drains me and I have to be cautious on what I expose myself to. That's not to say that I like to live blind or, ignorance is bliss or anything, but when it finally does get to me, it's something I realize I need to pay attention to. And one of those topics was the concept that we're leaving this inflation headed into a recession. And I was asking some, what I would consider basic questions. I'm sure other people may know this, but basic questions to Ronnie. And she just did such a great job, because one thing I love about Ronnie is whether we're talking about boys or recessions and inflations, she just makes everything so easy and comprehensible and digestible, and you never feel stupid when you're talking to her. And I think that's one value that both of us have for our businesses, is that we love to break down complexities and make them simple. So I think we're going to just honestly rehash the conversation we had, but anything you want to say before we get started? Not to put you on the hot seat, but
no, I was just saying this is actually an interesting topic to do today. One, because we talked about it on Sunday, but two, the headline today was "We are in a recession." I mean, so it's
breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. We are bringing you nothing but the best on time and delivered for you. So yes, exactly.
I mean, yeah. So it's one of those things that, the headline was that today. Are we really there yet? It depends on the economist you talk to. Everybody's going to have a little bit different opinion, but we're at least close to a tipping point if we're not there already.
And I also want to highlight something about you, if I may, really fast, so people understand how freaking qualified you are to explain this to us. You are not only a business strategist, you've also acted as a COO to multiple companies and a bookkeeper and an accountant and all of the things. So explain to a little bit of your work and how you have context, probably more than the average person does, in assessing how to move forward in times like this.
Is this like an actual interview?
I mean, I woke up thinking I am besties with the best. We're putting her in the hot seat today because
I'm telling you,
I don't know.
Okay. So I guess maybe we probably should do this for you at some time too, maybe next week. Tell my story.
Sure.
Some people don't really know.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the reason I'm doing this is because there's a lot of faces and a lot of voices out there. And I don't know why. I've seen 4 people recently start their own shows like we have. And I love it because everybody I'm seeing is out there, but there are so many voices and there are so many things. And it's who do we listen to and how do we say that they have credibility? And so it's you're about to do a damn good breakdown for people. And I want them to be okay, that wasn't just another topic that we always talk about, a beautiful girl saying beautiful things, making me feel better. No, this is actual evidentiary and backed by experience, knowledge that I'm jealous I get access to you every week. I'm jealous of my damn self. I was this is too good. I felt guilty this week because I felt I had a little bit of, I guess, comfort and understanding that I didn't have before we talked. And I was okay, so yeah, I am interviewing you because you're a badass. And it's people need to hear why also I can take the advice you give me with such ease.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I started my career at a newspaper. So, but once I left there, I went to a market research company. And while I was there, I went back and got my MBA. So I do like have an education. I have an MBA. Granted, I will say, and this is kind of one of my marketing messages I talk about all the time, I have a fancy smashy MBA, but it didn't tell me how to do a mail merge or, like how to like do things in an office day to day. But so while I was there, I ended up going to a company up in North Carolina that I was their director of operations, and they're a research company. They do market research. And in 2008, when the recession hit, what happens is we work with Fortune 500s and ad agencies. And so when recessions hit, big Fortune 500s start to cut budgets. And one of the first budgets to go is marketing research. It's not an operating expense. It's not payroll. Like it's low on the totem pole of things you need. And so the recession came in 2008. The partners came to me and said, we see this coming. You're the MBA here. What do we do? And with
no pressure.
Right. Well, and with a company like that, their business is a service business. So it's not like they have product or inventory to say, let's sell off a bunch of stuff. We have a service. Our biggest expense is people. So our biggest expense was people. Our second biggest expense was rent. There was nothing we could do about rent unless we were filing bankruptcy, and we weren't at that point. It was very early on in the recession, and they were trying to be proactive about things. So they ended up letting people go, and I was not one of them. But in that conversation, I said, I have this idea for a company, and they were like, that's a great idea. We'll be your first client. And they're still my client today.
I love that.
But that company gave me and still gives me access to a lot of contacts in big corporation, Fortune 500s, and ad agencies that work with Fortune 500s. So it's kind of interesting to be like a preferred vendor on the outside that can kind of get the sneak peek into what are big corporations doing and kind of following how they're making decisions, because they're making decisions based on economic standards that are happening in the market. They have to make those decisions because they're these big behemoths that they're not nimble like we are, right? Like you and I can see something happen, and within an hour, we've changed our strategy and our tactics.
Pivot.
Those kinds of companies can't do that. It's like, to do things like that, they have to have a lot of foresight. And so I always found with working with them, I got a lot of insight early on into what is happening. And so
almost like a forecast of what was to come, because they're like, steering a ship versus a jet ski.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of nice to have a little bit of that inside access to things like that, and kind of take my MBA and apply it to real world stuff on how do you actually pivot for things like this.
Absolutely.
And then take it and try and translate it for us, right?
Yes.
Because
which leads straight into it. So would you explain, and no pressure to be word for word what you said, but like, would you translate for us, what is the definitions of recession and inflation as just general concepts?
Yeah. So inflation is when there is an influx of cash into the economy. Okay. So people have a lot of cash, and the government basically like determines that. And how we got here now is the pandemic hits, people lose jobs, you get a bunch of stimulus money. So basically the government just printed money and put it into the economy, right? They just put it out in people's hands. That's basically what our stimuluses were. And so what that's done now is it's created a lot of cash into the market. And that is called inflation, when there's a bunch of cash. That then increases prices. So then prices of everything goes up because there's more cash in the market for it to go up.
Which we've seen in gas and food and like pretty much everything.
Yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of factors that go into that. There's, supply chain problems that are still happening. Right. There's a lot of factors that kind of go into it. But inflation is when there's just a lot of cash into the market. And then a recession then comes after that. So it's like a big, curve. Recession then comes from that because now prices are increased. Companies start to see markets change, that because prices are high, people now hold on to their cash. because they don't know what's going to happen and they can't afford things because they're more expensive. They hold on to their cash, and then companies then start to increase prices. And then once they don't have people buying anymore, they have to cut jobs. And then when jobs are cut, then people then have to use their savings. And we get into a recession then where cash comes out of the market because people are losing jobs and prices are still high.
Yes. One thing that I really loved when we spoke this weekend, you kind of gave the simplicity of that the recession times are for the necessities.
Yeah.
And the inflation times are kind of for the luxuries or just the nice to haves, not need to haves.
Yeah, because we have extra cash.
Yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah.
So bear with me here. I'm just a little athlete over here. So I interpret this in a couple of ways. You know, I've heard this in another way in real estate. I know your family is in real estate. They talk about when the market is up and when the market's down. And for me, I take everything back to an athletic position. And I was thinking offense and defense, you know, both, how do I want to say it? Both sides are still part of the same game. You can win anything. Like if you're not on the offense or you're on the defense, you're still targeting towards the win or whatever. And I really like that because when we spoke, it just gave me confidence in thinking, okay, I'm just now on, let's say, I would be curious what your thoughts are, but I feel like inflation would be offense and recession would be defense. Only because you have more, you're kind of more action oriented in inflation. You can do more, you have more cash, there's more things. And yes, things are higher priced, but there's more money to be doing things with, for very simple terms. And recession, you know, you're more mindful, you're stepping back. It's what do I need? And that's the defense of like, am I a man down? Like who's hurt? What do we need? Like who could get pummeled this round and who needs to stay up? Like what do we have? So I kind of broke it down like that. Would you agree that that kind of?
Yeah, I would take it in that regard too, because if you think about when you have an influx of cash, like you kind of are fairly, not necessarily carefree, but you get luxury. It's a different strategy. Like you can do things you wouldn't normally do. Your goal is to win at the game, right? Not that defense isn't too, but the offense's goal
like you're trying to score.
Is to get the ball down the field, right? Whereas defense, then you have less resources.
You're protecting
yourself.
You're
guarded. You're trying to keep the other team from getting to the end of the field.
And not lose too much ground to it. I love that. So then if we put this in for our next level of awesomeness, well, everybody at this point should just be like, yes, in the background, because this was incredible. But how do we look at this in terms of marketing for our businesses? And I think this is going to be a complicated question because you also first have to say, well, is this a product or a service-based business? Is it a low to high, high to low? So, you know, you're welcome for this question. But I'm curious, like, how do we put on our Ronii marketing hat in both markets? So when it's in recession, when it's in inflation, how do we approach it?
Yeah. So for the past year, we've probably all been selling. People have discretionary income. And when you have discretionary income, you buy things that you are luxury things. And so we've probably all been selling. Yeah. Nice to have stuff. We've probably all been selling, particularly in a service business, those services that are more expensive. We've been packaging things together. We as business owners have been upselling a lot to people, right? Because they have the budget to do that. So in times of inflation, you want to do luxury services. You want to upsell on things and create things into packages. But then when you start to go into a recession, you need to kind of take that and go, okay, people are going to be limited on budgets. What do they need? And how do I break my services apart to meet those needs? And I mean, as a business strategist, I would tell any one of my clients, you need to meet your customer where they're at.
Yes.
Because it's not about you. It's not about me as the service provider or the maker of whatever it is. It's about my customer, and I have to meet them where they're at. And so that's why we have to kind of look at economy like this as it's big shifts. I mean, granted, we're generalizing a population, but you kind of have to figure out, how do I service those people where they're at right now? And so we're just now kind of getting to that tipping point of, we've been in an inflation. There's been a lot of cash. And in inflation, what's happening is GDP is saying prices are high, everything's gone up, all of our basic needs, gas, food, everything has gone up in cost. And unemployment is very low, which means that everybody that wants a job has a job, essentially. So what we're seeing right now is GDP is up, prices are up, but people are starting to see that people are holding back on their budgets. So they're holding their cash, they're laying people off, and jobs now are going to start to see a decline. So unemployment will go up. And that's when you really start to hit into a recession, is when unemployment goes up. And so you take the services you have and go, what do people really need? And meet them where they're at, and break up your services into smaller bite-sized bits. You at the end of it, where you might sell one package that's $1,000, let's make the numbers easy, like, in the next week or so, you might have a client next year that you still might sell those $1,000 to, but it might take all year instead of 1 week, because you've broken it up into smaller pieces for them, and they can budget at that, and kind of keep up with it as things are changing in the economy and prices and however they're situated.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I think one thing to really highlight too is just meeting customers where they're at. I think there's a compounding effect I'm seeing happening, and it's my lifestyle, but it's something I want to address really fast. Is 2020. I feel like we're always going to have a layer of 2020 on us. Like, we've lived through probably the same way those people that lived through 2008 have on them, this cautionary mindset. Well, now it's like a double layer for them. I don't know. It's just like, I feel like a dipped ice cream cone or something. I don't know. You're just kind of in it. But the point being is, we had to be so mindful then. And I know, even personally, I gave a lot, and I don't want to do this in this session, but I gave away a lot of free work because I was just fearful for people. My clients, I didn't want them to tank out. I have a client in Germany, and they were one of the very first ones hit by COVID and how hard it hit her. I was like, I'll do anything I can, just trying to help, because we're good humans. But I want us to not just give away our services. I want us to be thinking about this, that it's a fluctuation, an offense, a defense. Sometimes you're winning, or sometimes you're scoring, sometimes you're defending. But I think with our consciousness of 2020, our awareness now, that no one can say, well, Ashley and Ronnie didn't tell me. We're telling you right now, like take a moment. Like, I know one of the industry standards is that a lot of people go into October. This is being taped in July, but going into October, you are planning for the next year ahead. If you're not planning a flip of your offerings from, focused on those high price, high ticket items, to flip and now do the next year on those lower ticket, more necessary, not need to have necessary items, you're going to miss the mark. And why would you be like, I don't know, nothing's selling? Like, guys, this is the time to take that into an account. And one thing I do, when I said this is a lifestyle, I believe that branding is something to be, not something to do. And when I say that, what I mean is it's being conscious, intentional, and symbolic. Hashtag y'all, I'm not sick. I have asthma and it's not working today. So excuse me, but being conscious, intentional, and symbolic. So how do we approach this on a marketing and a branding side? Is that your brand is the personification, the identity of your business. So you need to do what Ronnie says, meet the customer where they're at. Be mindful that their wallet has flipped over. It's not a bad thing. They're going to pull out the other wallet soon, but the wallet has flipped over. How can you be symbolic, meaning conscious, intentional, like intentional in the sense of showing that you are aware of their situation, sympathetic to their situation, and helpful? Because as service providers, guys, the first word is service. Be of service, not a selling monkey sales freak out there, but like be of service. And then that symbolic way is by you flipping your approach and offering your services in this way, it is symbolic of being a human and not just a money generating machine, because people are going to smell that stronger, like the skunk's ass this next year, than they are what they just smelled, the caviar this last year or whatever. So I think taking that approach into this is huge. So I love that you break it down like that. Would you say there's any okay, so if we take away, we're going into a recession. So now we know that's a need to have, not a nice to have market. For product-based and service-based businesses, what advice can you give to those? Because I think that pretty much covers everybody for anybody that would watch this, but is there anything product service specific that would be like, you guys do that?
So I'm going to answer this probably with a longer-winded answer than probably needs to be. But so I graduated from college in 99 and the economy was great. And so coming out of college, the messaging was always, you can do anything you want. Like you can do anything you want. And then all of us that are that Gen Xer that comes out of college in the 90s, get to 2008 and you're in a recession, and guess what? There are no jobs. You can't do anything you want. So I think that when you're thinking about services versus products, when you have a product, it's very easy. Marketing is very easy on products because I do marketing for both. I have clients that are product clients, clients that are service clients. Marketing for product clients, it's very easy. That's where you just determine what products do you have that are necessity and what products are like a consumable necessity and what products people buy with discretionary income. So coming into recession, gyms are going to have a really hard time because that's a discretionary income kind of service. We'll find that, luxury goods are going to be very hard.
I also think what's interesting too is like the concept of, we just lived through 2020. If you don't know a necessary item like liquor and toilet paper, then you probably missed the last 3 years. So that totally makes sense.
I've always said that if I could come out of college in 99 knowing then what I know now, I would have went into the liquor business or the candy business, because you drink when you're happy, you drink when you're sad. So you
I eat candy all the time. That is such a sweet spot for me, no pun intended, but like, oh my god,
it's a comfort food, like when it's a comfort food. When you're happy, you celebrate and you eat cake and candy. When you're sad, you're like, life sucks, I need chocolate. But thinking about product businesses like that, diversifying things. So like in the liquor business, if you're a liquor maker, right, you have a high-end whiskey that you sell during great times. And then you have a low-end whiskey that you sell when there's a recession and people are like, I got to cut my budget from paying $20 for this bottle to paying $5 for this bottle. So, if you can have diversification in your product line like that, from a high end to a low end, that's where you'll kind of hit both markets.
I'm sorry, you just said something that's so good. It's interesting. I think people need to understand that's why we have product suites, multiple price points, because that gives you the flexibility to play in the markets versus I don't know that anybody teaches this, but I'm sure there's coaches out there that are just like have one high ticket offer, we don't hear. I mean, I think everybody's heard this whole have a masterclass that leads to a webinar that leads to a course that leads to a, low, medium, high, all the things. And in the past, I thought it was kind of busy work, but now I'm realizing if you at least have those tried and true and refined over years, it's always going to get better. You don't need to make more, just keep doing the same things better. It gives you more plays to run during these different markets. So I like that. That was helpful. Sorry, that just clicked in for me. Like, that's why we build all these bloody programs.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, and with services, product is kind of easy to figure out, but with services, it's looking at it and going. So kind of thinking about when you're giving a service, if you're giving a luxury service and it's very high touch, maybe during a recession, right? Maybe during a recession, it's still kind of the same service, but less high touch. So like, how can you make it so that you take more of your time out of it and in providing it so that you can give a lower price point that people can actually get it. So I think
Changing up vendors maybe too.
Right.
You know, if you like to use the high-end vendor, maybe you have one that is a more affordable price point, or even not delivering all of it, just being really honest with yourself and the client and say like, hey, we can get to that when we're back at, you know, another time, but let's just do these parts as necessity for you now. So even tailoring it down. That's great advice. I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, our goal in business is always to have a price point on any service or product that our cost, whether it's cost of goods sold or cost of our time, as low as we can get it, right? So, you know, we're always going to be in times like that. But now that we're thinking about people are going to be limited on budgets,
right? How
can we still break that down to give them what they need at a lower price point without putting more of your time into it? And kind of like you said earlier, we want to help. We want to do all of that.
But no money, no worky.
Right. I mean, we've got to run business. We run businesses, not hobbies.
You heard it first here, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. I mean, so like, you've got to run a business. It's not a hobby. And you're not out there to give yourself a job. Like, that's not why we started businesses. If you started a business to give yourself a job, you don't have a business. Yeah. I mean, that's the hard truth about it. Like, if it's a hobby or give yourself a job, you don't have a business. And if you don't want one, that's okay. Like, that's fine. Everybody's allowed to do what they want to do. But if you're really looking to make fuck you money and be CEO of your own company, you have to run it like a business.
Oh, that's so good. I don't know what they're going to remember the most out of today, but that was a good one. The whole fuck you money. So when you guys are ready for fuck you money and recession or inflation, just come on back over here. We'll help you out. You know, one thing I was thinking of is the mindfulness that we need to have in business as business owners, as CEOs, is you could almost set yourself up for 2 cycles. So if you know we're going into a recession and you're scaling back, for lack of better terms, and you're helping your customers with like these necessity parts, set them up to be an easy next step with you when you hit into inflation, so that they have these pieces and it seamlessly transitions into that way. For lack of better terms, you are getting your full payment and the full project done, but in those incremental spots. So sometimes we have to put people on payment plans. Other times it might be whatever the budget, maybe they just don't have the budget. So think of it like that too. Don't think that the world is against you. I feel like that could be very possible right now. People are like, oh my God, it's out of my control. The world's going into a recession. Oh my God. But here's exactly how you put it in your control and play it the best you can. I know this sounds silly, but water polo was the sport I played. And the number 1 rule is there aren't no rules, learn how to break them. Sorry, I said that all wrong. There's only 1 rule, know the rules and know how to break them. And the second rule is there are no rules. So especially as a freshman, when you first start playing, that is so messed up. You're like, what? Like, what did you just say? But I think it applies in situations like this of organized chaos, where no matter what drill, prep, anything you do in practice, when you get into the game, you are always hodgepodging those drills, because it's like no one's ever where they're supposed to be. And you're just like, I gotta run a pinwheel over here, a point change there. Like, what am I doing? And I think that's one blessing I have, is having played sports where I can anticipate the next play. That was one reason well, that just sounds bad, but it's true. That's one reason I got the awards I did, was because I was always a play ahead. I could kind of anticipate what was happening. And I think as CEOs, we need to leverage those skills. If it came from dance or playing an instrument or whatever, if you know the bar ahead, or God forbid, whatever analogy you want to use, I think really being like, not a victim of the environment, but a player in it, and realizing, okay, I'm pulling out my recession playbook and this is what we're going to do. And look at the blessing, guys. Like, it's July. August, you can pout. September, October, you're going to plan. Then you're going to hit the ground running with a full new momentum of marketing in play. That's more than 90 days, which I always say it takes minimum 90 days to get momentum in a singular direction. Pick your one thing that definitely supports your clients right now, helping them, and is conscious to where they are, conscious to what their needs are. For example, myself, I've been playing on websites lately. Like, it's so good. It's so good. I got emotional on the one I built yesterday and get to showcase to the client this afternoon. I'm so excited. But for my other clients right now, we're building websites without websites. We're leveraging their social media platforms, optimizing that, using the links to act like baby websites where they can still book and pay through all of that without a website. So looking at that, scaling that back. And one thing I was telling a new client coming on board was, if there was one thing we have to do, it's a photo shoot, because photo shoots can be used on social media, on print materials, everywhere. A website is a website. It's static. It just, like, I need all the pieces to make it. So therefore, when I scale back, I'm looking at graphic design, I'm looking at photography and copy, because you can write your own copy if you have to. Like, well, actually, I believe you should, but that's a whole other topic.
That's a whole can of worms itself.
Yeah, that's a whole can of worms. But, you know, scaling back and like, what if you had half the budget to do the job you do every day? How would you do that? I think that's a good way of thinking of it. We have half the budget to do the project. What do we do?
Yeah. What are the foundational pieces to all of this?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
So while you were talking, something I thought about, you mentioned earlier about somebody that doesn't watch a lot of news, being an empath. I am also that way. So I don't really watch a lot of news, but one resource that I do get is called Marketing Brew. And I get their newsletter every morning. And there's generally like 3 to 5 like short articles. It's a short read. It keeps me up to date on what's happening in all of the markets. And this is how, like, that's how I knew the headline today was we're in a recession.
Wow.
Do I think we are today? Not quite yet, but it is coming, and it's coming pretty soon.
There's a forecast, not to make you an instant marketing psychic, but like, when you say it's coming soon, what does soon mean to you? Is that next 90 days, next 6 months? What is soon defined by?
I think that will start. I think the tipping point is going to be when we have 2 months of unemployment increasing. So that means more people have been laid off. I think we've got to have 2 consecutive months of that. And then that's kind of the tipping point. I think that'll probably come the first of the year.
Okay, so that's, I mean, guys,
we got a little time.
Amazing. Like, oh, good. Okay, so see, that's why I felt so relieved this weekend after talking to you. I was like, okay, because I'm also in a community that I love, and we did something, I believe, the beginning of July, because July is this mark of the second half of the year, and our mentor, coach, guide, whatever you want to call her, was like, okay, I want you to blank slate. Whatever happened in the first part of the year, that was what happened, but it doesn't mean that you can't still hit your goals by the end of the year. So like, give yourself a blank slate. Where are you now? What's working? What isn't? What do you need to start? What do you need to stop? Like all the things that we know, right? And so I think I even, you know, just throwing in a personal plug here with my move to Chicago, you know, I'm kind of in this weird limbo because I have 1 foot in Portland and 1 foot in Chicago, and I'm like trying to figure out how to do all the things. So for all of us though, I think that this is a great time to be like, okay, 2023, I'm going to plan a year of recession. How can I position myself in the next 6 months? Do you know how long that is, people? Like, if you've been in business at least a year, you know how long that is. If you're new, like we had our first guest who was brand new, she may not know this. 6 months is a bloody, like, that's 2 lifetimes for a business owner. Yeah. I believe every business owner lives and dies every 90 days. I mean, you were a new you by then. So you have 2 full lifetimes. Oh my gosh. So if cats get 9 lives, how many lives do entrepreneurs get? That's the question. Like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a lollipop or whatever? I want to know, like, oh my God. There's a moment. I'm going to sit on that. But this is so much time. So you can start now. Take a weekend, take a moment, take that CEO time to block off at the end of the day or wherever, a couple hours to just sit with yourself and be like, okay, reset. We're going into recession. what are the necessary items versus, you know, nice to haves, need to have nice to haves. What can I really, how can I position my messaging and marketing to say, I'm here for you and positioning myself for you, and use your brand as a culture, as a support, as an identity of somebody they want to glom onto to help them get through.
Right.
And also when we get back to inflation, that you're still there for the next stage. So I think that would be so good. Do you have like thought prompts or questions that you would tell? Because I know you don't like journaling, so I'm not going to say the J word. But something that, you know, if a client came to you for marketing strategy, business strategy, like COO, CMO, CFO, all the amazing O's that you are. Anyways.
That could have went a lot of different ways.
No, I mean, I just was like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
So as you were talking, to change the subject,
Yes.
from inappropriate to more appropriate right now. I think that something that people need to do, and I think this is across the board for all business owners, specifically small business owners, they need to pay attention to their customers. I find we get so into doing our work, we forget about the customer and paying attention to them. And so I think they need to pay attention to their customer, ask questions about what are they doing, what's happening in their life, what's going on, so that they can start to see the patterns of their client base and where they're going, so that you can meet them where you are. I think that I get this every time I walk into a marketing client and I'm like, so who's your target market? And they're so enthusiastic to say, everybody. And I love the enthusiasm. I love it. I'm so happy you want to help everybody.
Miss America.
I can't help you with everybody. Like, that's just not how this works. That's not how marketing works. Because if you're helping everybody, you're talking to nobody. So I think really honing in on who your customers are, like, and your current customers, who are they right now? Like, I could give you the whole, like, you need to go do market research and all of this stuff, because that's the world I come from. But nobody wants to do that. People don't want to talk to people. I mean, we've had this conversation before. People don't want to talk to people, but you do have a customer base. Even if it's only 2 people, that's a customer base. Like, what is happening with them? Pay attention to them, so that you can then start make the connections and the patterns that they're doing. You know, and you can also fit yourself into that. You're a customer of things too. I mean, I'm a customer of things. I buy things all the time. I buy services, I buy products, I buy stuff all the time. What am I doing? Like, I know where I stand in this economy. Most likely your customers are very similar to you and kind of in the same place. So what are those patterns? What are the connections you can make by just paying attention and listening?
Absolutely. I think from a branding perspective, one thing that's coming up is the cliche term of the customer experience, right? So like, now more than ever, whether you serve them or you don't, relationships. This is the time to reinforce your relationships of vendors, centers of influence, referral partners, clients. I mean, God forbid, like, you're allowed to call your past clients and be like, hey, how are you? How are you approaching this next recession, this next year of recession? Is there anything you need? Like, can I make a connection for you? Can I help you? Is there something? I mean, what would you do if somebody accidentally called you like this and was like, hey, how can we help you today? Like, what? I'd be like, hold on, I got to think about that, because I don't know.
Well, and I'm going to say this, like, how many times has that happened to you in the last year?
Yeah. Nah. So what an impact it would make, though, to be the brand that reaches out to their people, you know, and gives back. And like, I think that would be a huge thing. So customer experience, you know, just how can you position yourself, remind people that you're a resource for them, whether it's to be paid by them or to get them the connections they need, because while that might have just been a connection, it could be a purchase from you later on. Like, I feel horrible saying this, so I'm going to leave all names out, but we have a cat going to heaven in my community, and someone called me for the euthanization. I think that's how you say that. I'm sorry, that word I'm never going to be able to say, but a service that I used for Max way back when. And like, that breaks my heart. But now that person's back on my radar. I know what they're going through. I know where they're at. And I unfortunately happy to give that name and number. And then it comes back. So just how can you help people where they're at? Because I felt so good yesterday, not for the situation, but to be known as somebody that has the connections people go to when they literally are horrible situations, right? So that makes me feel good. So being a connector, being a resource, knowing your relationships, just checking on people, in my newsletter on the third Thursday, I send out a friendly check-in just because it's lonely at the top. It's lonely being in a business for yourself, being an entrepreneur, however you want to call it. I think we need to check on each other, especially in these recession times. And who knows, while you're talking to somebody, listening, you might actually, exactly.
What comes up?
Hear a problem that you can help with.
Yeah. I mean, I think listening is a skill that people just neglect a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I'm going to change the subject just really quickly because it sort of relates. So you have that story about somebody reaching out to you about euthanization for Max. Yesterday, I went to my doctor's office and the receptionist was like, I almost called you this morning because I found a little neonate kitten like this big. Like, and I know you do this. And she was like, I know you do the squirrel. So I was going to call you to see if you could come help it.
That's amazing. That's so cute.
I mean, the things that you're known about, but like, that's something.
And that's branding too. I love it when people are like, oh, I don't have a brand. I don't need a brand. Well, girl, this is your brand. Whether you're intentionally or unintentionally doing it, you are creating a brand for yourself by name, reputation, and what is associated with you. Absolutely. Another one that is not as cute and fluffy as our current stories. This was weird. When I went shopping the other day, I was literally dressed down, so I wasn't even thinking about it. And this woman like turns to me down the rack, like, when you're racking it up, turns, and she's like, so what do you think? Straight leg, flared, or skinny jean? And I was like, happy to help. What made you ask me? How'd you know to ask me? And what? Because like, I was like, do I still have stylist on me? Like, whoa, like this is crazy. She's like, I don't know. I just knew to ask you. And I was like, well, then I'm happy to help because I used to be a wardrobe stylist and we like go into it. And I was just like, that's so crazy. Like, I haven't done that in at least a few years now. I mean, for photo shoots every now and then, but like weird to be like picked up, sniffed out in public in the wild.
By somebody you didn't even know, just intuitively knew it.
Yeah. And then what was even more flattering was then like her two daughters come up and she's like, girls, you have to meet this friend of mine. And I was like, oh shit, no, we're friends. Okay. I'm like, these two girls, oh, you're a stylist? Wow. And I was like, right now I'm just trying to find some cute clothes because your girl's up 2 sizes, but no big deal. So yeah, it's interesting, but even my point of this is like, even when you're not trying to be you, you are you, and people will see that. And I think those relationships, we talk about it, but connections, conversations lead to conversion. So just let's talk to our people. And I feel like so many coaches out there are like, more, get more leads, go. Like, let's stop chanting like, and like go back to the network you have. You've built it over all the years. Like, who do you know? How can you serve them? Who can you just connect with and reach out to? It's surprising when you reach out to people that like, oh, I've been thinking about you. Do you ever want to just be like, damn it, why didn't you call? I always feel slightly like that when somebody's like, I've really been thinking about you lately. And I'm like,
then why didn't you call me?
Right.
Well, it's so interesting. Like, I had a past client from a year ago come back this week about doing a small project. So, like, it's just like, these are how relationships work. Obviously, she worked with me a year ago. Now she's in a position that she wants to do this thing again. So I'm the first person that she reached out to and emailed. So like, those things, like those relationships just keep coming back.
Yeah.
Whether I want it to or not, it's back.
Yeah, right. Yes. I know I'm going to be setting some new ground rules. I've been very nice.
Me too.
Very nice. And I'm not so nice anymore.
Well, speaking of that, with this specific client, I won't name any names either, but she's wanting to run a free webinar to then like lead into a program that she sells, right? And she wants to run Facebook ads for her free webinar. And I said, what's your budget? And she said, well, I don't know. What do you think? What are your recommendations? And I was like, not to burst your bubble, but I have a marketing calculator that does this for you. And looking at your ads that convert at 1.2%, your website probably converts at 2%. That's about normal. Knowing that your budget for this ad campaign to get 100 signups that you want needs to be $3,500. Like,
Damn.
like I can't be nice to you anymore.
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
it's the hard truth, you know?
Yeah.
And granted, that kind of burst her bubble a little bit. I was like, obviously, I realized that that's probably not feasible for you right now. And you can run whatever you want. I just need you to set expectations that you're not going to get your 100 signups for $100.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
not
and
how
I
this
know
works.
personally the work I've been doing too lately, I feel like I want to say it's been breaking my rules, but it's not. It's just allowing me to do parts of the bigger picture like we were talking about. So, I did 2 graphic design projects. The website I'm building out build out over the last, I'd say, month or so is done. And then I haven't really done full discovery, brand strategy, all the things. I'm doing like one-off little parts. And I'm realizing now after our conversation, I might just be setting myself up for recession services than I really realized, because people were reaching out with recession requests versus inflation requests. And it's like, oh, okay, hey. So that actually helps me review what's been happening in a more educated and understanding way, I guess I would say. So that's helpful.
Yeah. I mean, and even so, like subconsciously you've been doing it without even like really knowing it.
Oops.
But also, but also your clients dictated it to you.
Yes. And because I meet them where they're at. Weird.
Right. Weird how that works.
Yeah. One thing though I am eager to do, and I'm using my move, and I was actually thinking about this a lot recently, because I was like, if I wasn't moving, how could I infuse this change energy into my business if I felt like I was stagnant or stale or just kind of like operating by default? I can't wait to move, because it's going to allow me to reach out and update my contact information with people. Hey, what's new with you? I just moved across the country. Like, there's this thing. Like, what can you infuse into your life that's a talking point to get you on the phone of relevance to these people, to your, again, let's talk about it, your network, who you know, past, present, current clients, vendors that you work with, people that just like you, that you could reach out and be like, hey, new city, new capacity, ready for new business. If you know anyone, please let me know. Ask for those referrals. I think the best thing is getting to the referral marketing, because it's harder to do all the other stuff. And I think we take it for granted sometimes when we're like, I don't know, all my clients just come off referral. And I've actually had a few people say, hey, I need a marketing plan. I'm 100% referral. I was like, no, you don't. Please don't do anything. Do exactly what the freak you're doing. Maybe more of it, but like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and going to that, so you have a change that you can reach out. Like, most people probably don't. Like, I don't necessarily, right? But if you think about it, those are good opportunities. Changes are good opportunities to reach back out to your network. Use changes that are happening out in the world, not necessarily with you personally. Definitely. So thinking about this from, say, like a marketer's perspective, just yesterday, the CEO of Instagram announced that they're basically going to become TikTok. So that's a big change. That's a good opportunity for me to reach out to my client base and say, there are new rules with Instagram. We need to reassess your marketing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Like, here's this change. Here's a resource. I'm just telling you this as a resource. If you want to talk about how you can change that, let's.
Yeah.
And
hashtag everyone should call Ronnie for a strategy intensive to discuss what she just said, because that's a huge impact on a lot of us. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge, call her.
Yeah, I am not going to do your Instagram for you,
No, but at
but I
least
can
get
tell you
the
what's happening.
strategy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
can at
that might
least-
be something you could do. You could do like a group call or something and get a bunch of people and just do a group call for all of us and be like, hey, here's what you need to know. That would be helpful. Talking
Yeah,
about meeting people where they're at. Like, hey,
yeah,
I'm
I'll
gonna
tell
put
you.
a thing at the end in 2 weeks out. Jump on the call with me. If not, bye. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally simple enough to know like Instagram wants to be TikTok. So
I know, I'm so sad about that personally, just because I really enjoyed the platform, but I feel like that's a whole other can of worms. So
yeah, that's another topic for another day, probably. But
yeah.
If anybody's
Final-
listening and they're doing Instagram video, you're gonna have to TikTok it. Sorry.
I feel like I just died slowly.
I know. Even Kim Kardashian is pissed off about this.
I know that's the thing that got my attention was
Yeah.
all of these celebrities that are like, make TikTok or don't make Instagram into TikTok, leave it alone. And yeah.
Anyway,
Final thoughts, ideas, suggestions for people as we enter a recession market.
well, I think that we keep coming back to very specific themes every single episode. Weird. I think you notice it. One, I think in every single episode, I've been sitting on the floor. I'd have to go back and look at
That's
the
called
first
being
one.
grounded, Ronnie.
I think I've been sitting on the floor for every single episode. And two, relationships. And making connections with people and creating relationships so that you can do referrals and be a resource for somebody.
Yeah, everything is who you know in perfect timing.
Yeah,
I've
who you know,
always
not
said
what you
this
know.
from day one, as I'm going into my big change phase, I've been really like, what do I need to do to hit the ground running and make this like amazing? And for myself, since day one, I've said that. And I always used to add like an addendum to it. If everything is who you know in perfect timing, we're not God yet. We're very enlightened, but not yet. We can't control time, but we can control who we know. And I'll tell you, in every time of need or celebration or whatever the timeline is, when you have that one person to call or the person to go to, you just feel abundant. In another group, we talk about what are those things like a full tank of gas, a clean car, like a full fridge that make you feel abundant. I personally feel abundant knowing that I have the Rolodex of connections I have. And I'm really eager to build that up too in Chicago with not more, but just extend it into a whole new market as well. Because obviously I can do what I do from anywhere, but I'd like to build that up there as well. So
yeah,
absolutely. So ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap out our Mimosa Hotline talk show, remember, if you need to be grounded, sit on the floor. And if you need the answer to life, it's relationships.
I mean, pretty much.
Well, I will see you next Thursday, Miss Ronnie, and we will be back with even better things.
Yep. Bye.